School Board, District 13. We want to thank all of you for your attendance tonight, both those of you in here as well as those who will be watching at a later date. My name is Jay Evenson. I'm the opinion editor at the Deseret News. I will be your moderator this evening. We would like to thank our partners, the United Way, the Hinckley Institute of Politics at the University of Utah, the Sutherland Institute, the Utah PTA, the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools, and the Deseret News. Our candidates this evening are the incumbent Randy Boothe and the challenger Cari Bartholomew. The debate will proceed as follows. We will have 60-second opening statements by each candidate. Following that, I will pose a series of questions, and I'll do that in alternating order. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds to respond, and if requested, I will allow a 30-second follow-up response. The candidates have not been briefed on these questions ahead of time. We do have a timekeeper, Leah, if you want to raise your hand. And she will hold up warning signs letting you know how much time is left. We'll try, we want to stick within those time limits. If you're in the middle of a sentence, I'll let you finish your sentence, okay? But not if it just goes on and on and on. All right. That's the first half hour. Now, the second half hour, we're going to have audience questions, both of those of you who are here in person and those of you who are watching online. If you are online, you will need to post those questions to the chat function on YouTube. And we have someone here who will be collecting those and texting them to me. So we will hopefully have enough to fill up the whole hour. We're beginning at 20 minutes after the hour, so we will go until 20 minutes after 8. Make sure we have the full hour. Before this debate, I met privately with our candidates, and we flipped a coin, and Cari will begin with the first opening statement, and you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. Hi, my name is we've got it back. My name is Cari Bartholomew. Can we not?
I have muted.
Isn't it my speaker?
Try now.
Everybody turn their speakers all the way off. And I'll control your microphones.
Okay.
Am I good now? Hi, my name is Cari Bartholomew. I am a substitute teacher. I work for co-ops. I am running that our children need to change. Over and over again, I'm watching kids who are being demoralized and kind of feeling hopeless. And I would like to bring the hope and the joy back into education for both our teachers and our students. I believe in academic excellence, and I don't think that we should be teaching anyone in any way that they are marginalized or that they are victimized. So instead, what I would like to see is a place that is full of encouragement, that is uplifting for all of our children, that we can get back on being highly rated academically, and that we can teach real, true facts about history. My background also is that I grew up in the foster system. So when it comes to treating people like they're victims, it's not something that I'm okay with. We can't.
Randy?
I'm Randy Boothe and public education. I've been involved for a lot of years, 43 years on the faculty at BYU. I traveled with them around the world, 40 countries, and been able to share some wonderful experiences with those students. 16 years on school boards, board of directors of the worked 4 years. It's wonderful. I loved it. I've been able to serve as the chair of academic standards and assessment and vice chair of licensing. Those experiences have led me to 3 priorities. They are, first of all, school safety, parent for future years. teacher relationship, the parent board relationship. And I have gone out of the way to foster those bridges and so that the parents who understand their children the best have the opportunity to give us important feedback will help us arrive at good decisions and best practices.
Cari?
Sure. I bring to the board a mother's heart. I listen to people. There have been so many people in our district who have reached out to me as their advocate. I take their concerns to people who will listen, which often is not our actual school board member. I listen to teachers the same way. Teachers come to me and they say, we have these problems. Parent-teacher relationships are suffering. There are many, many teachers who do not feel respected by the parents, and there are many parents who are villainized, who are called names like crazy. So we have some real problems that need to be fixed, and I believe that what I bring to the table is an ability to talk to people on both sides, to bring them, because I am both a parent currently and also an educator. I work with people in all charter, public, and homeschool situations.
Thank you. We'll move on here. So recently, the State Board of Education decided that questions about restrooms and gender should be left up to individual schools to decide on a case-by-case basis. Do you agree with this decision? Begin with Cari.
I absolutely do not agree with this decision. I think that we're living in a world right now where we are being told to swallow lies. I think that's very hard for our children, especially those children who get caught up in things like TikTok or get caught up in social justice, gender type initiatives, and a few years later decide that maybe that wasn't the direction they wanted to go to. I do not believe we can have the conversations about what bathroom we should go into without letting our children know the amount of people who detransition. This is real, it's an absolute fact, and it needs to be addressed. Our girls need to be safe in the bathrooms. Our female girls need to be safe in the bathrooms. That is probably the most, to me, that's very much common sense.
Thank you. Randy?
I am completely in agreement with the fact that our children need to be safe. Girls need to be safe. Boys need to be safe. They all need to have privacy. Teachers, people that are coming into our schools, we need privacy. And I also believe that local leaders of education want that same kind of privacy for children. I believe parents, I think we're all on the same page. And I think we've got to cooperate together. I think that it is a local responsibility to ensure that there is privacy available for every child and for anybody else that's needing the use of a restroom. We've just got to, in this day and age, be very much aware that this is an issue that could cause people to be uncomfortable in their environment. And I want that comfort level to be available to anyone who has to access restrooms in our facilities.
Thank you. Next question will begin with Randy. What does equity mean? What does it not mean?
Equity are many of them that have been removed from our vocabulary in terms of being them the way decades. And I have a problem with poverty. It doesn't matter where they come from, their background. They are similar needs. And we That is our common goal. Thank you.
Cari?
Regardless of how we see equity, equity by definition is equal outcomes. So what we're seeing is a lot of higher programs, merit-based programs going away in the terms of trying to make sure that everyone has an equal outcome. Equal outcomes get rid of a person's desire to achieve more. The competitive nature is gone. We see a lot of miserable kids. We see a lot of kids who do not even care. I know someone today who did not care to graduate because they just thought, what matters here? I've been in classrooms with kids where they just sit on their phones staring at themselves, and they don't care to get involved because there isn't passion in what they're doing. So equity is to remove the passion. Let's talk about equity on another level. Equity on the caucus system. Equity. Do we have equal outcomes when somebody can pay their way to be elected? With equity, do we get equal outcomes? Do we really want to fix that bar and make it so that people who wouldn't normally have an opportunity, or do we take what we want but use words that are just kind of performative instead?
Thank you. Again, polite applause, please, but we don't want to have to, we have a lot of questions we want to be able to get to. Public education in Utah is on the edge of what might be, if voters choose in November, dramatic changes in funding sources, moving away from our income tax and more towards general fund and sales tax. Do you believe that education is adequately funded in Utah, and what is your position concerning this change? Begin with Cari.
Sure. I would like to see, I believe in school choice. So what I would like to see is the money follow the child. However, the strings attached become a problem. So is public education funded well? I think that there are a lot of places where we send our money that they don't need to be going into. DEI programs in K-12, SEL programs. These are places that we do not need to be sending our money. We can apply common sense and not have to spend our money there. There's a lot of computer programs that we don't even know what's on them when we see them in the classroom. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, a parent says, my child was just taught X and I'm not okay with it. And the teacher says, I don't know what you're talking about, because with the Chromebook, we don't see. So we're spending money probably in places where we don't need to be spending that money, when we could rather fund maybe school supplies so that teachers don't have to fund their own classrooms. There are other things that we can do with the money that we have to be more responsible with it. But at the same time, I do believe in school choice.
Thank you. Randy.
You know, this is a difficult area. I've been working on school boards for 20 years trying to secure adequate funding. And there have certainly been some improvements. We are better off than we were, but we certainly are not well funded in terms of the needs of every individual child. I look at particularly some rural schools and some of the challenges that they have. I look at special ed. I look at so many programs that are underfunded, and yet the remarkable teachers and volunteer parents in our communities roll up their shirt sleeves and go to work and make the magic happen. And Utah schools continue to be very positive schools. When you look at the national averages, you look at the U.S. News and World Report suggesting that education is the top of the nation is in Utah. And I'm going, oh my gosh. And look what we're doing it with the number of dollars that we're spending. It's amazing. And I know that resources are limited. So we must, as Cari said, find ways to be very efficient, but we've also got to protect the funds that have been set aside for public education use and not be diverting them to all of the other really good uses that they can come up with. We've got to protect those children. And whether they're having school choice or whether it's going directly into the public schools, we need those resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Yes, if you like, 30 seconds. Yes.
Sure. Just on the point about where our schools are today, we saw proficiency rates just this week come out that our schools in literature, science, and math are only at 30%. So it's not really something to brag about. We can do better. Our kids are not excelling, and we can excel. A lot of that is taking away a lot of this DEI initiative type stuff and instead focusing on academics for our kids.
Thank you.
Thank you.
30 seconds again for a response.
We need to be very careful when we are looking at comparisons in scores, because the legislature has set our scores high enough and we are trying to push higher. So we're not comparing apples and apples. We're comparing with other states, apples and oranges. So we've got to make sure that we're looking at what is really happening with the assessments and how they compare. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. Go back to another noise there. Okay, let's move on to another culture war issue here. State parents to be notified if their child wishes to use different pronouns or to identify as a different gender at school. Some say this might jeopardize their safety at home. What is your position on this? Start with, I believe it's with Randy.
Our state superintendent has taken a very firm stand, instructing all teachers throughout the state that this is not something that we're going to be doing in the schoolroom and in individual classes. And so I feel very comfortable with that instruction from the superintendent, and feel that it's not something that we need to be spending our time on.
Thank you. Cari.
I appreciate that law, or that the superintendent has made that declaration, but I also know that it's not happening. There are students who feel like they are overwhelmed with the pressure to comply with whatever social thing that a teacher might bring upon them. And I think that we should not be doing that. I think that the whole pronoun thing is far more in depth than than the general public understands it to be. But I do think that we just have to have general respect and general just a following. Like we need to obey what the parents want.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And speaking of parents and that, tensions naturally exist among various levels of educational governance, and whether an issue should be handled in a top-down or a bottom-up approach. Please tell us generally which issues, standards, or curricula should be addressed at the state board level versus the local district level versus the school or teacher level or even the parental level. Begin with you, Cari.
Sure. I believe the role of a state school board person, especially in today's climate, is to be very informed, to be very knowledgeable. As Mr. Boothe has said, there's lots of times that words get taken. So you will believe that you are implementing something that's really great, wonderful. It's going to inspire and encourage. Take something like wit and wisdom curriculum, but that curriculum actually underneath tends to, and there have been studies show that it makes our children more depressed. So I think that as a state school board member, your job should be to be informed enough that you're making sure that none of that stuff is getting through at the standard level. So that way, when it comes to the local level and they're making their decisions, they have very clear standards of this cannot come into my classroom. This cannot, I'm sorry, that this cannot come into our district. And then for the teachers, the same thing. But the school board originally needs to set the standards. They need to understand. They need to be so informed that none of this garbage is coming into the classroom and affecting our children's mental health.
Thank you.
I'm grateful to have served on academic standards committees for the last decade. I've spent hundreds upon hundreds of hours with parents, with teachers, with writing committees, with people with doctorates in whatever content area from all of the universities across the state and across the nation as we brought in consultants. And all of those people have contributed great ideas. But I have to say that we have listened very clearly to parents that have been on those writing committees, that have given us input. And many of you have been a part of that input. And we will continue to try to set very strong standards that will then be implemented at the district level with the curriculum that they choose. And parents will continue to have input, and local districts will continue to make sure that what is being taught, the instructional materials, are not only suitable, but are especially effective in teaching the standards that have been adopted and approved after immense effort to involve as many possible good minds as possible to help our children succeed in today's world.
Yes, 30 seconds.
My issue is who we're calling the experts. Many, many times those experts turn out to be grifters, turn out to be people who the parents, when you talk about parents, my experience has been of us are irrelevant. If we don't have expert in front of the title, then it's a problem. And so that whole expert thing needs to be proven, not just somebody who has a degree from such and such and whatever.
Thank you.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
Yeah, I fully agree that the experts need to be experts. And I would like to know which parents have felt that I did not listen to them, because I have listened and I have spoken to people. I have never turned them away. I have never said, you don't know what you're talking about. To that person, as I've talked with them, I have always listened and brought their ideas to the table.
Thank you. Let's move on. What should be the goal with testing? Is the state accomplishing these goals adequately? And is it a good thing that parents can opt their children out of tests?
Parents have the option to opt their kids out. That's their right. Of course it is. They're kids. They know they're kids. It does impact our scores because some of the very best kids are opting out. And so the overall state scores are going to reflect a lot of smart kids that are not a part of the mix. And it would be great if we could have all those smart kids helping us make everybody feel better about what's happening in the classroom, because lots of great things are happening in the classroom. Assessments are expensive, difficult, but boy, are we spending a lot of effort and time and getting a lot of input from parents and teachers to try to improve what is currently happening in the schools. I don't want to over-test. I do want to test so that we have the data that we require to help each of our students make the progress that they are entitled to make.
Thank you. Cari.
I think that there's time and a place for testing. I totally support parents being able to opt out. Testing is only a small part of the pie on how well a child does in school. Some children have anxiety and they don't do well in the test, but they do very well in other ways within the classroom. So I think that testing, it does give you, and especially if your child is heading towards a college or something, that it helps you know where your child is and where they're placing. My concern about testing and why a lot of people are opting out is because you shouldn't be opening up a math test and having a drop down on all of your pronouns and things like this. That should not be a part of our regular testing. We should be, if our tests were academic, if our tests were sticking straight to then I would support it 100%. But the reason people are backing out is because the questions are invasive.
The state board's vision is, quote, upon completion, all Utah students are prepared to succeed and lead by having the knowledge and skills to learn, engage civically, and lead meaningful lives, end quote. Do you agree with this vision, or would you want to see another? Cari.
I would love to agree with this vision, but that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing kids that are leaving demoralized. I'm seeing kids that are not ready they're fragile. They're not ready for the workforce. They are going into school and they are being told, let's focus on your social and emotional health all the time. Teachers, when I've subbed, I've had people come in and show me I can leave the classroom any reason because of my anxiety. We are coddling kids instead of giving them the steps that they need to be able to be productive members in society. So we need to have kids who are able to think. And I don't want to say critically because that word has been hijacked. So we need kids who are able to think analytically. We need kids who are able to compete in that world outside. And our kids, in many cases, aren't. Yes, there are exceptions. There are kids who are thriving. But in many cases, they aren't. Their senior year, some of these kids are going and they're working at Walmart and they go to one class in school. That is not expecting excellence from our kids. We should be lifting them up until the very second that we let them go.
Thank you. So I would have to say that I see students differently. There are certainly students, and I love to take students individually because they're all in different places, but there are many who are succeeding and who are happy and who are excelling and who are ready to meet any challenge, whether it's a new job as a welder because they went through a wonderful MTech program as they approach the end of their senior year in high school, and they're going to start a job at $80,000 a year with wonderful certifications. There are other kids that are college bound. They did well on their ACT scores. They are excited. There are many that are learning durable skills along with excellent academic skills. There are so many kids that are happy, that are excited about life. And the ones that are not, I'm concerned for them. And I want to help them. I want to figure out what are we doing as parents, as teachers, as community leaders to help those that may not be finding their way. I love kids, as I know you do. But to say generally that I see kids doing this, and that, I'm sure we do, but let's not ignore all the kids that are doing such wonderful things and the amazing teachers that are knocking themselves out with a classroom of kids that everyone is different and they need individual attention, and they're getting it.
Thank you. Many ideas have been presented for the future of the State Board of Education, from having its members appointed by the governor to changing the number of board members, or as some have suggested, eliminating the board entirely and relying on a superintendent only. How do you think the board should be structured? Should it remain as is, or should there be changes? Randy?
That we need to have some changes. And I would say among the most important changes is we have got to find ways to build bridges between parents and parents who also happen to be school board members or grandparents. And I know in some minds it's a problem that we grandparents are so concerned about children because it really is the job of the parents. And I recognize that that is very important, but I have just as much interest in my grandkids as I did in my children. And I'm going to keep working for them and knocking myself out and involving other parents and grandparents in that process so that together we can find solutions. To lose that parent input and leave it with only a superintendency, I think would be a big mistake. Because no matter how much you say the school board is not listening to parents, we are. There are hundreds of hours of listening going on and hundreds of emails that are all being read. We may not have time to respond to 800 emails that I got in 1 week, but we listened and we reflected what we heard in the meetings and in the discussions that ensued.
I think that we must have elected officials. We cannot have, when we have them appointed, we have and have nots. We have people who are elected because they think the right and the correct ways. There's a correct way of being. We have a lot of educational, I would say educational arrogance, where you don't get to have a voice if you don't have a certain degree behind your name. 52% of Utahns do not have college degrees, and they shouldn't be called crazy or referred to as less than, because they have just as much heart and just as much love for their children as the people sitting on the board. They have just as much desire for their children to rise above, and they want to be heard. They deserve to be heard. The parents who are standing up for things that they believe are truly harming their children. So what we have is kind of a colonization. We have a, we know best, you will follow what we want. That's the way it goes. And if you're in that category, or not, we're going to write you off as being insignificant and maybe even extremist.
30 seconds.
I'm speechless because I think it's so remarkable that we could be in this kind of a situation where parents are being put at odds with one another like this. I really believe that we've got to listen to each other. And to say that those of us who are on one side are arrogant because we have a college degree, I have not had that experience. And I could find a whole bunch of parents that could come and testify to you that we have listened and we have talked and we've been interested in what you have, what have you expressed? What are your concerns? How can we help solve the problems? Thank you.
Yeah, that's not what I said. I didn't say that because you have a college degree, you're arrogant. I said that some people with college degrees are arrogant. There is a huge difference there.
Thank you.
All right. Folks, we have reached the halfway point. That was quick. We'll now open this up for questions, and we'll start with the group of people who are here. You've taken the time to drive here and be here. So if someone would like to raise their hand and ask a question, I think you were first, the ma'am back in the books.
Yes, thank you. My question is about local control and what that means to you. So I just sent you an email about the 24 explicit titles that are in Needland School District, a couple of us. And I asked if parents could be notified because the school wasn't taking it out so they could protect their own children. And your response was a trust in administrators, when I wanted parents to make that decision for their own child. A trust in administrators and local control. And so my question is, if there's a state law, the LEAs and districts are sovereign to state law. And they are not the ones who determine if they follow state law or not. So I was hoping you would explain to me what meant by local control when the issue to me seems like they're just not following the law.
All right. So the question is concerning local control and books that are offensive or not appropriate, certainly not age appropriate.
Yeah, I think it should be legality. So I wanted to know what he meant by local control and how Cari also sees local control, differentiating between law.
Thank you. And I think it's actually Cari's turn to answer first.
Sure.
So.
Okay. I think that when which often happens with the school board, you take a problem to the local school board and they say, oh, that's the state school board's decision. And then you take it to the state school board and they say, oh, that's the local. And it kind of seems like it's really kick the can and it's an excuse instead of just dealing with it. So what happens then is that legislatures get involved, which I've been involved with many of them, because they come and they say, what's going on, Cari? And I try to explain it to them, and I work and I make the public comments with these legislators who I have very strong relationships with. But the thing is that when they have to make that decision, it is a vote of no confidence in our local and our state school boards.
Thank you. Randy.
When I responded, I was hoping that we could get a report from those who have the responsibility at the local level to carry out what the legislature has laid before them, so that I wasn't taking back a responsibility that had been firmly placed in the local area, but we were asking them to step up to the plate and be compliant with the law, which I then, as I mentioned to you in my email, I sent that information, your information, and copies of everything that we have at the state board level to the district top person, assistant superintendent responsible for libraries, for sensitive materials, for all of the reviews that are taking place. And those people then responded back to me. Were you copied on Suzanne Kimball's response to me? And she explained that, yes, you are correct in all of these, but these certain books. So she gave me a full report on everything that you gave me. And I've been waiting to hear back, which I heard from you today, waiting back so that we could reconnect and I could give you a report on what they had to say. But I feel that there are so many children. I'm sorry, I can't finish the answer because I'm out of time, but I'm happy to talk with you afterwards and let you know that local areas have got to do this to protect our kids. There's too many local for one little group of people in Salt Lake City to make sure that we protect our kids all over. Thanks.
I'm going to take a question here from someone online who wants to know what is your stance on SEL and how it's incorporated into most subjects? Begin with Randy.
Social emotional learning has been going on for decades and decades. Not the social emotional learning that is transformative and the social emotional learning that has now become a hot button topic and something that is very dangerous for our kids. When it comes to certain things that we're teaching children in terms of respect and standing in line and taking your turn and being a good sport and all of those kinds of things, and how to have a happy disposition and make the best of a tough situation, and I can do hard things. Those things are just part of character and part of things that you learn as you interact with other kids and you play on the playground and you have good teachers who care. I believe in all of that kind of wonderful positive reinforcement, helping one another figure out how to live with one another and interact with one another. But transformative SEL schools and parents need to keep making certain that those kinds of things are not getting in the way of the education of their children.
Thank you. Cari.
Well, I would agree with that. But Tim Shriver comes out here and speaks to teachers often. Tim Shriver is the head of CASEL. CASEL is Transformative SEL. If you go to CASEL's website and you type in equity, you will find out what the overall objectives of SEL are. Utah is rife with SEL. Disagree Better is SEL. So SEL, social and emotional learning, is really social and emotional compliance. And when you really get down to what is SEL, SEL is hatecraft. SEL is teaching our children to center around some at the exclusion of others. The exclusion of others is first maybe the white male, and then it begins to go more and more and more, divided, and it's really teaching our children to hate. This is why I cannot support it. I love the regular teaching our children how to be kind and loving and accepting of each other. I love that, but that's not what SEL is. And as long as Tim Shriver is coming and talking to our teachers, we have a problem.
Thank you. Let's go to another question. You gentleman right here.
The topic of educational funding came up earlier, and the woebegone concept that it was falling short. I'm a substitute teacher for 10 years. My son is a high school principal in Alpine School District of a huge high school. In my opinion, funding is not short. There's plenty of it. The problem is the mismanagement of it, and the waste is epic, and that is an understatement. It has to be fixed. We don't need more funding. We need more management and attention to the money that's available. Change my mind.
So okay, so your question is then if there is waste and mismanagement, and how should you address that?
I can't change your mind. I completely agree.
We are surrounded by good administrators. So if there is incredible waste, have you talked with those administrators?
Absolutely, and I've seen it day after day.
And what do they say?
They say, they basically give it a pass. It is something that doesn't concern them. In fact, my son at the high school says, if you don't use it, you lose it. That's what they say. And it is ubiquitous.
Well, I'm living in a world where we're trying hard to see where the dollars are being spent and where we can find dollars that are being misspent that can be redirected to critical issues like academic excellence and like higher teacher pay and like school supplies and a lot of other hot button needs that we hear from teachers and from parents and we see ourselves. So when there's waste, I would love for those parents to say, here's some waste, so and let us know so we can go down there and talk with those administrators and see if they would like to share some of that waste with some things that we might feel would be a better use of those funds.
Thank you. I'm going to go online here one more time. Do you feel that things like Safe UT and certain school groups are promoting a lifestyle in schools that is appropriate for all children? Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. Randy, I think it's your turn to go first. Things like Safe UT and certain school groups are promoting a lifestyle. Have we already gone through that? All right.
Safe Utah.
No.
No.
All right.
App for suicide and things like that.
Okay.
Oh,
Do you think
Randy.
that's appropriate for all children?
Yes.
I would say that no. I think that many of those issues need to be dealt with by parents in the home, but they need to be supported. Pardon me?
They're promoted in schools.
They're promoted in
They're
schools.
on every website.
Let's have the candidates answer and not so much back and forth. It can get
I
out of hand.
apologize. I kind of invited that. So I'm sorry. There's no question that we have got to be very careful about what we are promoting because there are a lot of third-party entities out there who are great. And if it's something that is very valuable for students, then we ought to promote it. But if there's things that are questionable, somebody's got to vet that. So the question is, who's vetting it so that are not appropriate out to this, going to be getting out to the students, and then we're having to repair and backtrack in areas that we don't have time to even accomplish all that we need to accomplish with kids.
Thank you. Carrie.
Right. So Safe Utah app was created to help kids who are have suicidal ideation. And so for that reason, people felt that, that this was needed. One of my big concerns about it was that it said that they were being told to share it with your siblings, but don't share it with your parents. That was one of the main concerns about this. Now we know that suicidal ideation, it pulls you into the whole mental health thing, the whole mental health complex. And the mental health complex in our schools, mental health does not belong in our schools. Mental health clubs that have kids playing at being therapists does not belong at our schools. There are children who really do have mental health issues and they need those to be met. It's not the school's purview.
Thank you. The gentleman right back here has had his hand up for a while.
Thanks for running. I want to have on your side, but I don't
Sure.
respond to it. You said I'm a proponent of school choice as one prevent government regulate. If you'd like to see something with no strings attached,
Right.
I have some concerns about that. Given that when we talk about the government, if I go back to our founding documents, the government is really we the people. It's a republic, and we elect our government officials, much as you said for the school board, we should do that. when we're talking about no strings attached, what is there to prevent there from being fraud and abuse? What's there to prevent someone who takes this money for choice and may use it in ways that we don't understand? I have great concerns. I realize that not all of us have children in school. I do one right here who's in school. I have a daughter who's graduated. But I have, and I'll continue to pay money for taxes to support our schools, after my children grow up. But I, as a taxpayer, want to see that accountability. And I kind of would like you both to speak towards that.
Can you read what I said again?
You said, I am a proponent of school choice as long as the steps are taken to prevent government regulation.
I didn't say overreach.
It says government regulation.
Okay, well, what I meant was overreach. And so regulation at a certain point, is it even my turn?
Yes. it
Okay,
is.
great, okay.
Yeah.
So what I mean by overreach is I feel like the government that we have right now is not serving we the people. The government that we have right now is saying that it doesn't matter what your beliefs are, you will do what we tell you to. I see a lot of authoritarianism in our government today. And so those are the things that when I'm saying I don't want those to come into the homeschool situation. I don't want when I'm teaching my son about the Constitution, I don't want these newfound whatever things that the federal government says that we must now be teaching our children that I fundamentally don't agree with. The idea of having my child forced to be fundamentally transformed, which is again SEL, but having our children fundamentally transformed is something that they have no right to do, in my opinion. So that's what I mean when I say strings attached. I mean, let's get the government in its purview and let the family raise their children.
Thank you. Randy.
So I think the question is a financial, a fiscal question. I believe in accountability. And when I hear that mismanagement is taking place, my feelers all go up and it's like, okay, where? Let me see this. We have got to get to the bottom of this because we don't have enough resources for the state of Utah to do everything that's got to be done. And if there's waste, there has got to be accountability. There have got to be, and my experience on the school board is that we have business managers, we have auditors, we have people in each school that are really being careful. Maybe I am a Pollyanna, but I have experienced honest, financial people. And Jones at the state board level, he is working way overtime to give us accurate information. And if he sees any hint of people mismanaging funds, that's it. We're stopping. We're going back to point zero and trying to figure out what's wrong because we've got to be accountable with those funds.
Thank you. Let's go online again here. Give an example of how you've worked with others to accomplish an important policy. You're going to be you're running to be a member of a board, and that takes cooperation and effort in order to get things done. Randy, we'll begin with you.
I don't think we need quite as many new laws every year in education. I think that many things can be solved at a local level. For example, there is a wonderful woman by the name of Lysandra Harker in the Provo School District. And Lysandra is a mother who has a daughter who doesn't have enough time to eat. 15 minutes is what is allowed in her elementary school. And she tries to sneak the food in her pockets because by the time she waits in line, there's just not enough time. And she gets a stomach ache. And so Lysandra has been working like crazy. She's done hundreds of hours of research, looked at every state in the union. What would be the best use of time? How could we do this? She's come to the school board, to the principal, to the superintendent, came to the state school board because they were saying they didn't have time. They couldn't give them 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes. And lo and behold, when they came to the state school board, we met with Marcia Judkins, one of the House of Representatives for that area. and we were able to solve some problems, and I think they're going to get their 10 minutes extra, and that little girl's not going to have a stomach ache and can eat lunch. That is the kind of wonderful work with parents who are committed and educators who are trying to solve problems, and a state board who can go, hey, it really is possible. And this is important.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You're fine.
Sure. Like I said before, I have relationships with many legislatures. The first thing that I did was worked on R277-328. I helped with the SEC in understanding what that meant and why it was harmful. I helped with removing CRT and helping with the HB 264 Equal Opportunities Initiatives, which means that I spoke with Katie Hall, I spoke with Carrie Ann Lisenby, and I worked with them to understand that not all minorities need to be saved. In fact, most of us would rather just have that ability to have our children learn that they can save themselves instead of having somebody else do that. I've worked on HB 29 sensitive materials. I have been a strong voice about getting sensitive materials out of our schools when people have said, oh, they should stay there because it's really important that Black and brown people have representation, which I don't disagree with. But I do disagree when the representation means that we have to talk about kids in certain situations on buses. That is not acceptable. So I have built these relationships. I've even met with the governor and showed him what ethnic studies really was. And so once I showed him what ethnic studies really was, I got a call yesterday that said, Utah isn't going to touch it. And the reason they're not going to touch it is because I went from person to person to person in our legislature and explained what it really was, because I cared that much that our kids are not being taught to hate.
Thank you.
Sure.
I read a lot of what both of you put online and things, and I just have a question. You talk a lot about accountability. As someone who taught high school for 25 years, my husband is still a teacher in Payson. I would like you to help me understand, what is your plan to establish accountability? Like 1, 2, 3. Because one, I didn't have very many problems because of where I taught, right? And I taught the AP classes. My kids came to class. My kids, and I loved being a teacher, and I was a pretty good one, but so was he. Guess what? His kids, because where they come from. Help me understand. And I don't mean to take much time, but as a parent and a teacher, when my kid had a teacher who wasn't teaching, I took the day off and sat in her classroom all day. And guess what? It changed. So help me understand what your plan is to create greater accountability on students, on parents, on teachers, on administrators, when it comes to money, education, whatever.
Sure. Let's first start with getting rid of restorative justice. Restorative justice means that the kids are kind of, like, again, I'm going to use that word, they're kind of coddled. They're said that, oh, because they've had generational trauma, they can't reach these standards. We have to show these kids, every single student, that they absolutely can, that they can do more. We need to expect more from our kids. Again, my background is the foster system. I aged out of foster care. This idea that we can't because we've had too much trauma in our lives does not help us. I know it feels really good to say, I'm doing so much for these kids. But the best thing you can do for those kids is have them look up, stand up, look in the mirror and say, I accomplished it. I was able to do it. A teacher helped me do it. Or a parent helped me do it. Or a foster parent helped me do it. But we have to, the accountability, first off, is that kid. We have to show the child that we believe in them. The teachers, they need to be supported. Thank you. The teachers need to be supported by their administration. There are lots of times when people, I have neighbors who have sent the kids out of the room because of bad behaviors, and the administrators don't back them up. We need to be backing them up. So I think that the accountability has to come on the most local level possible.
Thank you. Randy.
I really believe in accountability, and I have seen what accountability can do in a child, in a teacher, in an administrator, in a parent. When you're accountable, you just feel good because you are accomplishing and you're moving forward, and you can see the progress. You can see some of the problems kind of begin to fall away, and you're able to live life a little more fully because you are accountable. A person without accountability is going to constantly be hitting against the pricks, having walls come up right in front of them, trying to figure out, how do I get around this? How do I get away with this? How can I ditch fourth period today, because I'm not ready, I'm not prepared? Accountability builds confidence. And I am so excited to continue to build each child with the help of parents. And sometimes parents want to, push back a little bit on accountability because it requires time and follow through. And that is what's required from every teacher and every parent and every student that wants to be accountable and then enjoy the blessing and the rewards of accountability. I fully support accountability, and we have been working and will continue to work to streamline ways that we can help one another be accountable to one another.
Thank you. I'm going to take one more question from the audience. I know there are many of you here, and I'm sure both our candidates will be happy to stay and talk to you individually as well. This woman right here has had her hand up for a while.
Thank you. Jamie Rendell with Path Forward Utah. 2 years ago, I was with a friend of mine, Joe Perry, to run for state school board. This year, I have 2 candidates that were running. And the reason being is that I'm listening to what you're saying, and I think all of a sudden, I think you're starting to catch on to some of the concerns parents have had. So my question, I'm going to do the Natalie Klein question there. I was the biggest fighter for Natalie Klein to resign. However, I feel like her voice did not get heard, and she was bringing up a lot of the concerns that now you're seeing, SEL and these other things. So on one hand, I think she crossed the line and she was inappropriate. She should have resigned. She's not going to continue. But this other part of me goes, she brought things to my attention, and she tried to bring things to the school board's attention that I don't think her message was heard. So I'd just like to know what you feel in hindsight now on some of the things that she was trying to bring up.
I think that she brought up and continues to bring up many important initiatives and issues that need our attention. In bringing them up, I would have hoped that she could have presented them in a way that would have welcomed input and feedback and interaction and dialogue between the peoples, rather than saying, this is a problem and this is the person who has the problem, or this is the school, or this is the teacher. And that, anytime that you're pointing a finger like that, even if it's a legitimate finger, and it definitely is happening, is not perhaps as effective of affecting change as if I were to go to that individual, maybe in private, with an administrator or with somebody who they have responsibility to help them see these are concerns that are being brought by parents, or these are things that have got to be fixed. And are you ready to fix them? We want to help you fix them. And if you don't want to fix them, then bye-bye. But if there are legitimate concerns, let's solve them in a different way than just putting it on social media and hoping that everybody is going to rah, we're going to fix this, because that may not get it done quick enough to save this next generation of kids.
Thank you.
So if this would have been the conversation that we would have had for the last 4 years, I wouldn't be running. But it seems to me that sometimes views change when it's time for an election, and things get said that have never been the support or the stance while on the school board. Now, when it comes to Natalie, I love Natalie. Natalie is a friend of mine. Natalie also made a mistake. So when people want to say, which they often do, oh, she's the next Natalie 2.0. No, the difference is that I understand if you make a mistake, even if, and I'm not saying it's for sure, but I'm saying even if you are set up and you make a mistake, you still have to look ahead and you have to go, they're going to use it. They're always going to use it, because we live in a time of repressive tolerance where this side can do whatever the heck they want, and this side can do nothing. And anytime this side even opens up their mouth, we will crush them. That's what I mean by hate craft. That's the reason that I'm running, because we can't teach people to hate each other because this group says that you should hate this group. We can't do it. And we can't do it to our kids because it's psychological abuse. That's why I'm running. That's what I stand for. And my views will not change between now and the next election.
Thank you. I want to once again, before we go to closing statements, I want to thank our candidates, Cari Bartholomew, Randy Boothe. Thank you so much. And I want to thank again our sponsors and our great volunteers who made this evening possible. And most of all, I want to thank you, the voters, who have the initiative and the interest and the passion to come out here tonight and participate in this debate, whether you're here in person or online. Thank you very much. So we began this evening with Cari having the first opening statement, so we will have Randy give the first closing statement, 60 seconds. Thank you.
I have enjoyed this journey in education, in public education, and I continue to enjoy it. I have a track record of being kind. I have a track record of listening. I have a track record of caring for kids and for teachers and for administrators. I have a track record of caring about fellow board members, communicating with them, supporting them, listening, engaging in dialogue. I want to continue doing that and would appreciate your vote on June 25th. Thank you.
What was missing from that statement was parents. Parents were missing from that closing statement. I am here to be a parent's voice on the board. I also work in education. I love kids. Anybody who knows me and sees me around kids knows that I love kids. I also love my country, and I want American excellence taught. I want our children to not hate and want to dismantle our country. I know that this is the one place where you can come from nothing and rise up and be sitting at a table looking at potentially being the next state school board member from nothing. That's the message that our kids need to hear. And we need to work again to unite all of us, the teachers, the students, the parents.
And charter schools.
And charter schools, absolutely. And charter schools and public schools and homeschools. Thank you.
Thank you to both candidates.
You can close these out.
I hope so.
Thank you.
She started out that way, and then she tried initially.
Thank you.